Okay, when I initially open Photoshop, it looks like this. Where we have a home that has a little tutorial section and showing me some preview thumbnails of things I've been working on. This is part of the tutorial image we're going to be working on now. Under learning, there are some instructional videos that you can get straight from Adobe. Not a bad idea to do those. Under your work area, there are a couple things: Lightroom photos. If you have Lightroom, which I do, and you've shared it, cloud documents if you've saved things up to Adobe itself. Anything deleted would be under deleted. I don't have anything deleted there. And the option to create a new document or open up an existing document. This is our lesson one, so we're going to do an open file. Open, or we could click that open button down there, or we could use the keyboard equivalent, which is the command key plus open. So I'm going to go ahead and say open, and I'm going to browse on my computer into my lesson one folder, which is already set up for me. If you downloaded these files from Adobe, you should have these folders. Lesson one contains a start and an end file. If we open them both up quickly, I'll just use my shift key to select them both, or you could use your command key to select them both and say open. So this is our end document that shows the corrections that we made. I'm going to close my properties panel there. And this is the start file. Okay. All right, so I don't really need the end file, so I'm going to close it out for now and just start working in the start file. And if you look to the right, you see that there are two layers over here in the layers panel. There's a ribbons and rows layer. The ribbons layer is turned off. There's these eye icons that you can click to turn things on and turn things off. You can click on a layer to activate that layer. Currently, we want the rows layer to be the active layer, so I'm going to click back on that layer. This side of the Adobe Photoshop environment is for where palettes go. They're all located under Window. And you can see the ones that are active and forward right now, like the adjustments is checked in the list, and it's also highlighted over here as the forward panel. If I click on libraries and bring that forward, then I can also see that that would be one of the selected panels. Another way to bring panels forward would be to just do it in the list right here. If I want to bring adjustments forward, I just click on adjustments and it comes forward. If you ever need to reset your workspace, you can do that under Window, Workspace, and you can see that I'm in Essentials. That's the type of atmosphere I'm working in. And there's Reset Essentials if I needed to right here. It'll kind of pop everything back to the start. And Learn comes up, which I don't really want right now. I'm going to push my adjustments panel forward again. And your tools are all on the left-hand side by default. Now, these things can be customized. We'll talk about that later. But for now, we're just going to get started working. Okay, so our file's open. And the first thing we should probably do is do a save as. And you're going to do this every time when you're working. You're going to go File, Save As soon as you get your file open. And I'm going to call it, working. And I'm going to put my initials in it. You should probably do the same because you're going to upload your files to my Canvas. And so I'm going to put DY so I know just in case something gets messed up. If you want to use your middle initial, that's fair too, to be more clear in case somebody has the same initials as you. .psd, which is a Photoshop document. And I'm going to do this into a different folder. So I'm going to go into my digital imaging folder and look for completed CIB. I'm going to create, I see I have a lesson 2 folder already there, but I'm going to go ahead and say new folder. And I'm going to create a lesson 01 and say create. There it is. Leave it as a format of Photoshop. That's the PSD file extension up here. It was already there, but I had to retype it. And let's just leave the default settings then for everything else for now and say save. Okay. So we're good to go. And you can see it's changed its name up here. It's called working_dy.psd. I don't like to put any spaces into file names, especially if I'm going to use them on the internet. That can cause some problems later on. And try to name your files without any special characters. Don't try to put in things like exclamation points or asterisks or things like that. They mean something in computer languages, and sometimes they can get confusing. So I would use a file naming convention of alphanumeric. So letters and numbers, and you can use an underscore or a dash if you want to separate words. We'll talk a little bit more about naming conventions later, but try not to use anything like a question mark or anything like crazy in your file names. You can use upper or lowercase letters as well. That's fine. Okay, so the first thing they talk about in the book is zooming. There's a couple ways to do that. You can go under View in the menu, and you can see zoom in and zoom out, fit on screen. So there's some options right here. You can also see that there's a keyboard equivalent for that. Okay, it's a command key plus the plus sign or the command key and the minus sign. Command 0 will fit screen on Windows. So, we do a command, we just click on it, we can zoom in, or we can use the keyboard equivalent, command key plus minus. You can also use this scrubby effect. So the scrubby effect is you have the zoom tool itself. So that to get to the zoom tool, you want to hit Z on the keyboard and it'll take you there. And then you can click and hold down and drag, or do the opposite, drag it out. Okay, and they call that the scrubby effect because you're kind of scrubbing back and forth with the mouse. If you remember, command 0 was fit to screen, so I'm going to hit that command key and the 0 key and fit that back to screen. All right, the first thing I want to do is change this image. If you notice, the image itself is kind of, I'm going to call it flat. It doesn't have a lot of really good contrast. Although there's some blacks in our image, there's not any really true whites anywhere. This is probably the lightest area here or down here, around the outside edge of this flower. But we really want to have some good tonality in the image. So we're going to do an adjustment. And the first adjustment they have us do is a brightness adjustment in the properties panel, or excuse me, the adjustments panel, which when you click on something in the adjustments panel, it brings up a properties panel for that particular item. In this case, they want us to start with brightness and contrast. So I'm going to click on that. And you can see when you roll over, it'll tell you the name of these different items. But that's the first one in the adjustments panel. And the properties panel comes up. And I want us to move the slider, if we're following the text, to about 98. And then the contrast is up to 18. So I'm going to do that. All right, and so the image is improved quite a bit. And one of the things we can do to see that is to, an adjustment layer has been made. So above the rows, because we were on the rows as the active layer, if you recall. So the new layer is now above that, and it's visible currently. If I make it invisible, you can see there was where our starting point was, and here's what we did to the image. In reality, what we did to the image was we created a layer above called an adjustment layer. So we didn't really mess with that layer below, or sort of creating a filter, if you will, on top that we could remove. And that's the great advantage of having adjustment layers, is that we don't actually do any physical change to the image. And this is called non-destructive editing. So when we're in here and we're doing something like this, we could always just delete this layer altogether if we ever wanted to, by dragging it down to the trash like this and saying in the layers panel, and it's gone, right? So if I do a Command Z or edit, undo, oh, it's not letting me undo. Okay, well, I can do it again. I can just say brightness and contrast, go to 98, and it was 18. If you're having a hard time with these sliders, you can always just swipe in the box and type it in as well. Okay. Okay, they say double click the properties panel. I'm just gonna click this little arrow, double arrow here, kind of get rid of that for now, and do a quick save. Now saving, we've already saved it by naming it, so we could just do a Command S on the keyboard. You can see right here, or you can scroll down, File, Save. I don't do a lot of scrolling myself. I like the keyboard shortcuts. They help you work faster and be more productive. So, but if you like to scroll, or for the beginning, you can't remember what the commands are for everything, yeah, use the main menu. And that's what this is called on the top. This is the main menu. By the way, this area here, what I'm looking at, is called the options bar. And when you select the tool, the options in the options bar change, right? Depending on what tool you're in. Okay. And so we did a Command S just to save. One of the things that you can notice if you make a change to your image, like if I double clicked and decided I wanted to change something like the brightness down a little bit, notice over here in my red dot for closing my window, there's a black dot inside of it. That black dot means that I made a change and I haven't saved since the last change. So I'll move my slider back up and I'll do a Command S, and you'll watch that dot will go away and it's just red, meaning, okay, my file's been saved recently and I'm good to go. Okay, so we're back in Photoshop. We're about to do a couple things. We're going to go up to our ribbons layer. That's the one that's currently not visible. So we're going to make it visible. You can see that there's that little happy birthday graphic that comes up. I'm going to click on the layer itself to make sure that it's active. Okay, even though I made it visible, it didn't actually become the active layer right away. I'm going to go I on the keyboard, which is going to get me to the eyedropper. So just pressing the I key, you can click on the tool in the toolbar as well. And then come over to one of the blue areas on the ribbon and just click once, and you can see that it picks up that blue color here in the foreground color. And then we're going to get our marquee tool, the rectangular marquee, which is up here. Again, that's an M on the keyboard. So if I back off and just press M, it'll select that tool. So again, it's good to learn them if you can. We're going to draw I think it's a 3/4 inch by something. We're going to draw a similar rectangle here. Bottom part of the image, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit and draw out. I think it's about the width, or the height is about 3/4 inch, and it's probably about 2.5 inches in, something like that. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but just get relatively close. And then grab our paintbrush, okay, which is B on the keyboard. Something fun to note is that you can use the left and right curly braces or brackets, which are underneath the plus sign, or the equals on your keyboard, to make the brush smaller on one side, bigger on the other side. You know, I mean, you can always come up here and adjust your brush this way, but you're going to find out that it's a lot easier to sort of be in that keyboard mode. My brush is set to 100% flow and 100% opacity at a normal setting, so that's good. So I'm just going to start painting. I don't have to worry about going inside or outside, excuse me, of the selected area, because it's only going to let me paint in the selected area. So you can kind of quickly fill that in with my paintbrush. Then what we're going to do is deselect, which is under select in the main menu. You can just say deselect, and or you can do the command D, which is a little faster. And we're going to grab one of our selection tools, the polygon lasso. If you have the lasso tool out underneath, you can just go L on the keyboard to get there as well. If you do a Shift L, I'm going to move away from that little tutorial. If you do a Shift L, it'll move to the next tool that's underneath. So if you see underneath, there are 3 other tools with the L next to it. So I can keep Shift L and toggle through those tools. So if I did it again, Shift L, I'd go to the magnetic. Oh, it's not letting me because I made a point, which is probably good, you guys to know. You have to finish your selection. So I click somewhere on the artboard. So I'm gonna just move away from that for a second. Okay, so if I did a Shift L now, see how it changed to the magnetic selection tool. Okay, so Shift L again, lasso tool, Shift L again, back to the polygon, which is the one we want. So you need to zoom in. You can zoom in a little bit. That's Command plus, if you remember that. And we're going to try to draw a little cutout very similar to the one that we did, or the one that's up in the top. So it has that ribbon, has that little indent. I'm just going to start here. I'm going to use my Shift key to keep my tool nice and straight. I'm going to click along there, and then I'm going to come in about halfway. I'm still holding the Shift key down and help me get. And I click once there, then I'm going to click here, and I'm just going to click one more time there to finish it. And you see the little O by my polygon. That's telling me I'm going to close this selection. When I'm out here, it's just like, oh, no O. And when I get over it, it says, hey, you're going to click now, you're going to close it because I'm near the end point of where I started. Now I have a selection. It's not perfect. But it's close enough, right? I'm going to say, okay, delete. Hit the delete key on your keyboard. And because I'm up on the top layer, there's essentially, that's what it looks like. So it cuts a hole right through and allows me to see the things that are below. I turned on those, off and on those visibility buttons. So once I have that cut out, I'm just going to do a Command D, right? Or you again, it's under select. It's a selection or marching ants that we're working with right now. We're going to say deselect or Command D. I like my Command D. Keyboard, it's fast. Then I'm doing again a Command minus to zoom out a little bit, take a look at my thing and say, oh, that's kind of close to what it looks like in the book exercise. So we should probably do a Command S as well, right? If you remember, Command S is file save, right? So you can, again, scroll and do that if you need to. It's a little faster if you just do the keyboard shortcut. All right, so we're going to go and select the horizontal type tool, which is the first tool. It's the default one. You can see there are 4 other type tools underneath, and you can do the same thing we did with the lasso tool, is shift, T, shift T, shift T to sort of toggle through all those tools if you want. But the first tool that's on top that's already highlighted here is the one we want. Type is a vector type image. So when we're dealing with type, we're dealing with shapes or objects. So automatically when we type something, you're going to see we're going to get a new layer in the layers panel. That's because we're drawing an object rather than a pixel-based thing. And I can probably show you a little difference between those two right now. I'm going to click on Adobe Illustrator and launch that while I come and do this other part. So I'll click back on Photoshop. And they want us to set the type tool up in a certain way. Notice the option bar automatically changed to our type settings. So it's Minion Pro Italic is what they want. So let's find out if we have Minion Pro. First thing I'm going to do is come here and swipe rather than scroll through the menu because I have a lot of typefaces. Yeah. So I'm just going to swipe the typeface and start typing. M-I-N-I-O-N, and they want Pro Italic. So I have Minion Pro Regular. I'm going to select that first. And then from the pop-down menu, it says, hey, I don't have Italic. And it also says in textbook, you can use another typeface. So the reason why there's no Italic here is because I just don't have on this particular machine that version of Minion Pro. So we'll just stick with Minion Pro Regular for now, or Roman also. They want 32 points, so that's already selected here as 32 points. And they want us to click the swatches tab. So up here we have some little swatch here based on our typeface. Oh, they want us to go directly. I'm going to cancel this. They want us to go directly to the actual swatches. So we're going to go to swatches palette here to bring it forward. And select any light colored swatch. They say a pastel yellow. So we're currently working in a file that's RGB. If I go to the RGB, I can select a yellow, or I can come over here if I grab the color picker instead, which might be a smarter move, right? And once I'm in the color picker, so what did I do? Let me cancel that again. I came up and I went to the color, choice here for my typeface, and I clicked on it and it automatically brought up the color picker for me. So if I'm going to do something with type and I want it to be similar, I can take the eyedropper away from the color picker and sample some of the local color here. So just sample that same yellow that I have down at the bottom. And you can see that comes up in my swatches as an active swatch. I'm going to say OK. And now I'm going to come down and they want us to type Elaine, but I guess, I'm going to type And when I first click, you get this lorem ipsum, which is just a way of saying, you know, I'm going to kind of put dummy type in until I actually start typing something that I want. In this case, I'll say David rather than Elaine, as it tells you in the textbook, but you can type Elaine if that's what you feel good about. So you can see that I can select type just like I would in a word processing program. If I go to the move tool, which is V on the keyboard, oops, to click away for a second, go to the move tool. I can move that type around. And you see it is on a separate layer by itself. It says my name, David, right there. I can also go back to the type tool, T, and come back, grab that type, change anything about it. If I decided I don't like the Minion Pro and I want to go to something else that's what was it, Myriad Pro, I believe we started with. So let's try that. Let's go, I think Myriad MYR has a lot more different types of typefaces that I could work with. If I went, Myriad variable concept italic. Ooh, no, it doesn't match. I think I'll go back to my Minion. Oh, there we go. Minion variable italic concept italic. That's better, right? Looks a little bit more of a match to the typeface we have up here. All right, so once we're satisfied with that, we can hit enter our return. Well, actually, we won't have a return over in the type box because then we get a return and we'd be down one more line. Okay, they tell you that you can do things like they're talking about the undo feature in here. So we could edit, undo type layer if we wanted to. So there it is. Okay, edit, redo. Okay, so it goes back. So you can sort of undo or redo at least one step in that sort of Command Z. That's a keyboard shortcut for doing that. Okay, we're going to save our file. So Command S, or go under File, Save. It's up to you. Put you in the same place. Okay. Don't forget to compress your file. This completes that first lesson, and put your file up on Canvas.